Hey everyone, and welcome to your Java example on how arrays and loops can work together. So we have our hello world program pulled up here. I'm going to delete our hello world instruction, and I'm going to create an array. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because we've learned all these concepts before and learned all the syntax. So I'm just going to kind of just go through and just explain the coding a little bit. I'm going to create an array called groceries, and I'm going to assign it to. Actually, I'm going to assign this in a new way. It's kind of a faster way to do this. I'm going to assign it this way. So I'm going to assign it to a list here, and we're going to call this carrots. I guess celery, milk, eggs, and bread. Now, these are 5 elements. What you can also do is you can create an integer called list size and set it equal to the size of your list. And if we didn't want to do it this way, if we don't want to create a groceries list this way, we can say string and then pass in our list size. That's kind of a nice way to, I gotta say new string. This is kind of a nice way to initialize this because when we go down and we have to create our for loop, we know the size of our array is going to be the same. We know that our for loop is going to go through the same number of iterations as the number of elements in our array. But for this particular example, I'm just going to initialize it to 5 elements and keep our list size up here. Okay, so we have our list, our grocery list. Let's create our loop. We're going to say for. And as we've discussed before, and as we've seen before, we're going to say integer I is equal to 0. I needs to be less than our list size, right? And we're going to do an I plus plus. Awesome. So what we can do here from inside the for loop, we can access our groceries array. Remember, this is an integer that's going to increment every time we run through our loop. So what we can do is access our groceries array using this integer in the same way that we would with any other integer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this here for the system.out.println. I'm going to print our groceries array here. All right, cool. So let's run this, and we can see our output here. So you can see we print out all of the elements in our array down here. Awesome. So I'm going to create a little comment here, a little print line here, and we'll say system.out.println, and we will say printing with conventional for loop. And so this will be our conventional for loop right here and how we print out our groceries. So now what we can talk about is a range-based for loop. So I'm going to do out print line. We'll say here printing with range-based for loop. So a range-based for loop works specifically when you have an array list or an array or some type of list that has a set number of items. What you can do is you can just say for each. And it's actually already filled up. It's already sort of started it for you here. You're basically saying for each string in our array of strings, then do this thing. So whereas we manually created our for loop over here, where we're going to start with I, we're going to say it's less than list size, and we're going to increment it each time. This is such a common way of printing out items or way of iterating through lists that we have a shorthand way of doing it. So this syntax for each grocery in the groceries list is basically doing this same thing as up here. It just looks a little bit cleaner. So I'm going to do a system.out.println, and we are going to print our grocery variable. So what this is doing, what this grocery variable ends up being is The grocery variable is this right here. It's groceries of the, I of the index that we are iterating through. So it basically, this range-based for loop does the same thing as this for loop right here. So let's run our program. And we can see that, our conventional for loop here prints our elements out here: carrot, celery, milk, eggs, bread. And our range-based for loop does the exact same thing. The only reason you would want to use a range-based for loop is, it looks a little bit cleaner and you have to write a little bit less code, but behind the scenes, it's doing the same exact thing as our for loop there. So you can do this also with while loops, although with while loops, you need to create your variable on the outside of the loop and kind of, increment it manually. It's just, you can do it that way and it'll work fine. It's just that that's kind of what for loops were created for. So in those situations, just use a for loop because it's a little bit more clear of what's happening, or use a for each loop because it's clear. What's happening is pretty clear here as well. So this has been your example on using loops with arrays. I hope this kind of clarified a few things with you. I showed you a couple shorthands here for initializing the array and a for each loop here. These are very, very common in Java and just kind of make your code a little bit more clean, a little bit more readable. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks.